Welcome to another episode of the Biohub, a podcast brought to you by Avetics. I'm joined by Robert Hoffman, the Chief Financial Officer of CytoDyn. Robert is a true industry veteran with decades of experience leading finance and strategy across some of biotech's most recognizable names, from Arena to Heron and Kintara. Over his career, he's guided IPOs, spin-offs, fundraisers, and M&A, all while serving on the boards of multiple biotech companies. Now at CytoDyn, Robert is helping steer the company as it advances its lead monoclonal antibody program. This conversation is about leadership, staying motivated in biotech's tough cycles, and the big vision for CytoDyn's future. It's an absolute pleasure to have you, Robert. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, really well. Really well. It's amazing to have you on.
Thank you for the introduction.
No, it's a pleasure. Let's just start with your story. You've held senior financial and leadership roles across multiple biotech companies. Can you just walk us through your journey, but also just some of the key lessons you've carried with you?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to. You touched on, I was part of the startup management team at Arena Pharmaceuticals back in 1997, kind of dating myself, but that was my first real foray into biotechnology. It was 97 was a tough time. I think we had $1 million in the bank when I started. We didn't have a building. Fast forward, we had 6 when I left, and so I took the company public in 2000 as VP Finance. Over that time period, I think I raised $1.2 billion by the time I left in 2015. But some of the real lessons I learned when we were a small company, I always, this one story is kind of telling. We were a small company, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 people, and we hired a receptionist. So the receptionist had to take lunch. And so I would fill in for her at lunchtime. And to a T, it was just the chemists would walk by and they would laugh at me for being at the front desk. I'm like, I was VP Finance at the time. I'm like, just you wait, someday I'm going to be CFO and I'm going to remember, and sure enough, we grew to at 1.500 employees. And, I reminded them each time. So, but the point is, when you're a small company, you do whatever it takes in order to get the job done. And that was really important. And one other thing on that vein, but I'll get back to my experience. Every Monday I'd bring in bagels, and it was called Bagel Monday. And I remember when I left, at some point, 3 or 4 years, I stopped doing it. But when I left, all those older employees remembered and thought it was really cool that the CFO would bring in bagels every Monday. Really look forward to it. So again, it's these small things that you don't think of when you're doing them, just make an impression on folks. So, but fast forward, we went public in 2000, again, raised, I think, 113 million in the IPO. A year later, we raised another 115 million. We did deals with Merck, J&J, and Eisai along the way. I was instrumental in those from a financial perspective. We actually acquired a manufacturing facility in Switzerland. I was the managing director of the facility in Switzerland, so I go over 4 or 5 times a year, at least, meet with the team over there. Really important. One of the other things that I learned along the way too is just treat people the way you want to be treated, and so that was something that really always stuck with me. Someone along the way told me that, and again, it's simple words to say, but if you do that, it really resonates with folks. I left there in 2015, moved on to a couple other companies, including Anaptys Bio, Heron Therapeutics, which had an approved drug, which was really helpful because back in San Diego where I was at, not many folks had approved drugs. So I had revenue to think about and whatnot. That was really helpful in getting on boards that actually have approved drugs. So I thought that experience was super helpful. Along the way there, I joined a board back in 2013, 14. And once you join one board, it's actually much easier to get on other boards. So I always view it as a baseball manager. You can't be a baseball manager till you're a baseball manager. And so it's just one of those things, kind of like CFO till you can't be a CFO till you're a CFO. Anyway, fast forward, I retired and was sitting on 6 public company boards, which sounds like too much. I was very lucky. I had one in Singapore, I had one in Sweden, another one in Toronto, and spread out. And the reason I say that is I never had conflicts because they were all in these different time zones and really good management teams to a T. So that was helpful that they kind of stayed in line. One of the companies I sat on, Kintara Therapeutics, I was chairman of the board. The CEO was turning 70, and he said, "I just don't want to do this anymore." And I said, "Well, I don't want to do it either. I'm living my life, sitting on these boards, and it was a great gig, so to speak." And he said, "Well, just talk to the scientific advisory board members." And I did, and there was, MD Anderson was represented, UCLA was represented, Harvard was represented, and to a T, they thought, Robert, this could change the landscape for GBM patients. And I never wanted to be CEO, but I decided, okay, I'll do it. Fast forward, we went to a really well-controlled phase 2, phase 3 study through the Global Coalition for Adaptive Research, was a platform study in glioblastoma. The drug performed about the same as the current standard of care. Not any better, not any worse. Safety profile was about the same. And so there's really no path forward. So I was able to raise some money after the drug failed, unfortunately, to get into a merger with Tahura Biosciences, which is an immuno-oncology company focused on ovarian cancer as their lead program. And I sit on the board today. I also sit on the board of Fibrobiologics and Esperion. I saw CytoDyn as a really interesting opportunity, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. And that's why I sit here today. So
Yeah,
I'll
it's
pause
amazing.
there.
What a
Yeah,
journey
thank
so
you.
far. But yeah, I mean, the next question is about CytoDyn and what inspired
Okay, there
you
you
to
go.
join.
Okay.
Um, and we obviously had the pleasure of actually placing you at CytoDyn, which is amazing to have you on
Yeah.
in that respect as well.
Yeah.
But other than the great recruiters selling you into the opportunity, what inspired you to join?
Yeah, it's funny. I always think it's a low bar to join. For me, a low bar, but it's actually a high bar, and I'll touch on that. So, I first thing I do is I read about the science a little bit, but I don't get too caught up in that initially. I want to make sure the management team and the board of directors are like reasonable people because I getting back to Kintara, I really enjoyed being CEO, and I was really surprised by that because I never really wanted to be CEO. And so I met with the management team, Tyler and Jay, and I really liked them, and they seemed like reasonable people. There was a couple other companies I had met with that the folks were not reasonable, not normal, and maybe reasonable is the wrong word for some of them. I just want people who are normal, who you can have an ego, but it shouldn't be outsized and whatever the case was. So then I met with each of the board members, totally reasonable, well qualified folks that I thought, okay, now I'm going to dig into the science. And I view the science, the retrospective data in these TNBC patients is really, really compelling. We have to prove it prospectively, but I thought this is a really interesting opportunity. The reason I say that too is at Kintara, I was really, really disappointed that our drug didn't work. So one thing that I view as really important is being able to have interactions with patients that you're trying to help. And although this was kind of one step away, when I was at Kintara, there was 2 moms who had called me. Both times I was in the JFK lounge in New York, flying back to San Diego at the time. And they both had sons and both wanted to get into my clinical trial. And one had kind of stepped out of the hospital room to call me. And I don't know how my phone number got out there, but it was fine. And I can't give medical advice, but I just put them in touch with folks that could steer them to see if they're eligible for their children to get into the trial. And it was just heartbreaking to hear these moms talk about their sons in both cases. And so One in particular, I was in the JFK lounge and I spoke to her 2 weeks later, and I asked if she was able to get into the trial, and she said, unfortunately, it's too late. And that really caught me off guard. Every time it catches me off guard. And so I feel like that's kind of one of my unfulfilled career opportunities to help patients. And so fast forward to CytoDyn and leronlimab, I think we have an opportunity to change the landscape of cancer treatment for a lot of patients. And I'll touch on that a little bit, I'm sure. So that's why I sit here today. I want this. It's my last operating role that I'm going to do. I'm getting too old for this, but I think it's an exciting opportunity to help patients, and that's something that I kind of missed in my career.
Yeah.
Kintara in particular, where it has really stood out. So here I am.
Yeah, you can see how much that means to you. And I think you're right. Like CytoDyn are doing some really cool work, but they've obviously had like an interesting story
Yeah.
from their past. But just for people who don't know CytoDyn too well, just give us a snapshot of the company and what's happening at the moment.
Yeah, so leronlimab is our main program, and really our only a large molecule. It's a humanized monoclonal antibody that targets the CCR5 receptor. The one thing that really, once I started digging in, is it's very well tolerated. We've tested it over 1,600 patients in different indications, so very large safety database. That's really important. That we don't that safety. You just got to prove efficacy. We look back at this retrospective data, and I'll touch on that a little bit. Now we just have to prove it prospectively. We're looking at some really large market opportunities. We're looking at solid tumors. We have an ongoing phase 2 clinical study in colorectal cancer. The market in 2025 is in the U.S. alone is expected to be almost 14 billion, and that's growing to 22 billion in 2035. So again, large market opportunity. We have really interesting data that I'll touch on a little bit in triple negative breast cancer. That market opportunity is $3.1 billion. And we have possible expansion to other solid tumor types, pancreatic, glioblastoma, which could be really interesting, would really satisfying for me at some point, sarcoma, prostate cancer. So the induction of PD-L1 on cancer-associated macrophage-like cells, CAMLs, could amount to a significant improvement for patients, turning cold tumors hot. So you think about Keytruda, for example. ICIs in general, about 40% of patients are PD-L1 positive, which means 60% are PD-L1 negative. If leronlimab works how it's worked retrospectively, and we prove it prospectively, and we can turn some of those cold tumors hot, that opens up a lot of patients who are otherwise ineligible for checkpoint inhibitors or ICIs to take Keytruda, for example. So really interesting opportunity for us in that regard.
Yeah, and looking ahead, what's the big picture vision for you guys? Where do you see the company in the next few years, for example?
Yeah, so it's really the PD-L1 story, turning these cold tumors hot. And, again, back to me, I think that would be really gratifying if we can open up this opportunity to help so many more patients. I mentioned the turning these cold tumors hot and opening up to new patients. If you look at the median overall survival for TNBC patients, it's roughly 8 to 13 months. Looking retrospectively at our data, we looked at 28 different patients of TNBC patients, and looking at 5 out of 5 patients who upregulated their PD-L1 and received leronlimab in an ICI are alive today after 4+ years. 5 out of 5. It's just amazing and that's almost 5 years now. We continue to move, and 3 of the 5 had no evidence of disease. these are women who were very sick, who had a median of in the entire study of two prior lines of therapy. So again, very sick patients. If you look at the other 23 patients, uh, none of them are alive today who didn't take leronlimab and an ICI at the higher dose. So we could really have the opportunity to change the landscape on a going forward basis. So we have an ongoing colorectal cancer study that we're working through. We're going to look at the PD-L1 upregulation as we go along with the study as those patients are dosed. And then we're looking to get a phase 2 started in triple negative breast cancer, which will look at those same indications as well. So we're working with the FDA. So one can imagine that if you can upregulate and open up more patients, as I mentioned, to taking an ICI, that really opens up a huge opportunity for CytoDyn in combination with an ICI. And there's many, I should say handful of companies that have ICIs, PD1 and as well as PDL1 companies that may want to work with us in the future. We are in very early stage discussions with companies about maybe studies that involve their programs. So that would be what would be really interesting is kind of now putting our heads down, but getting these studies going so we can get to the data and getting the story out. I think Max, we were talking before we started the podcast. I'm trying to really get out and talk to folks. So we'll be at Bio Europe. I'm hopeful to get on folks' radar, pharmaceutical companies, so that when we do announce this data, they understand the story and can move quickly to do things that they want to do in working with CytoDyn.
Yeah, I love that. So much work to do. You've hit the ground running since you came in, and like there's a lot to work for here. Like you can see the passion the way you're talking about things as well, which is interesting. You've obviously led both teams in tough times and exciting times in terms of the market.
Yeah.
How do you keep your team motivated through both the ups and downs?
Yeah, I did this really interesting thing at Arena, and I'm starting to do it at CytoDyn's. So one of the things that I think is really interesting is knowing about the patient population. That's really important, but B, understanding the focus of the company and what everyone within the company is doing. And that's really important now, given now a lot of companies, including CytoDyn, is very virtual. Because before you could go into the lunchroom or wherever and you'd bump into people, you'd understand what they're doing. So at Arena once a month, I'd pull together the accounting team and we'd have a speaker from the company come in and tell us what they're doing in their certain area of discipline. So, it was really fascinating. I think it really helped my accounting group understand sometimes when they really needed something, they understood what they were working on and why it was important to them. And they also had a personal relationship with them too. So, fast forward 2, 3, 4 months, it was really, really interesting that I had a couple groups come to me and they said, we're feeling really left out. You haven't picked our group yet to talk in front of us. I say, well, hold on, I'm trying to do one a month. We still got to get work done on the other side too. So it really resonated with my accounting team that they understood the business entirely versus just being, what do you call that? Pigeonholed into just doing accounting, but getting a greater understanding for what we're doing. One of the really interesting things we're doing at CytoDyn is we're working on some patient interviews that I think will be really helpful internally as well as externally about what they've been through. So I was on a Zoom call, and there was an individual who was married to one of these survivors, and the woman came on just for a brief few minutes, but really alive and vivacious. And here she's had this really bad prognosis 4 years ago, and she's cancer free now, and just really, really fascinating. So I'm going to put Jay in front of my Dr. Lazari, the CEO, in front of my accounting group in the next few weeks, just to talk about what he's thinking about, and then we'll get someone from clinical and do the same type thing, so they really have an appreciation for what we're doing. I'll figure out how to incorporate the patient component to understand why we're all in this and why we're doing what we're doing and why we're working really hard. I will say I have a really good accounting group, so I'm really thrilled to inherit that from the previous CFO.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love what you do there as well. Sometimes different departments can feel very disjointed, but then
Yeah,
like you say, you've got to incorporate that patient side as well, because yes, everyone in the company will have come across somebody they know or love with cancer and
yeah,
be affected in some way. But then seeing firsthand patients you're treating, it's like, yeah, this is why we're doing it. It puts it all into perspective.
it really does. It really does. And, and the other thing too is you can't take yourself too seriously. And so I did start a football pool. I just, before anyone, once this gets public, I supported. I give gift cards every week, but it's out of my own pocket. But it's funny how that too just gives you something to talk about and whatnot. And so, of course, the first week I won, and I kicked the gift card to the next week, and somebody else won it. So anyway, just the little things too to show that you're human beings, and that
Yeah,
yeah. So
that's that
it all
culture
resonates.
aspect as well. It's like yeah, everyone's passionate about what they're doing, but like, there's got to be that team bonding in some kind of way as well, and some kind of things to bring you together that aren't just
Exactly.
work. Um, because there's always this weird thing, aren't there? Because most of the time you can't choose who you work with. You just kind of put with those people. So if you can bond them in other ways than just work, then you're winning.
Yeah. And everyone has a story too. And so it's important to figure out how to tap into that and understand who they are and why they're doing what they're doing. So I find that really important.
Yeah,
Even Uber drivers, for example, I chat away with them and find out what's going on, because I do travel quite a bit, and I always find it fascinating what comes of that conversation. So
yeah, that's interesting. Um,
yeah.
and then on the complete flip side, instead of how you motivate your team, this might be quite similar, by the way. How do you personally stay motivated? Um, And then I don't know if it comes into it, but how do you stay motivated as a leader as well?
Well, that's a good question. So, yeah, the first part is very similar. That I think about the patients. I mean, that's really like what motivates me is that glioblastoma story that I'm not going to tell again, because, like I said, I always get choked up. But I think it's important to think about people who have these really horrible diseases. We're very much focused on oncology, that we could help and really change the landscape for a lot of people. That keeps me motivated. And another thing that keeps me motivated, and I've done a good job of this, is surrounding myself by people that are much smarter than me. So I think about Arena. When I first delve into biotechnology, I sat in the room and we're working on multiple indications of different things. And I walked out and the C goes, "How much of that did you get?" And I said, I got about 5%. And he's like, "That's really good." And so, fast forward, I really studied up and understood the market when I got 50%. And each time I got better and better. And, I think about Kintara, I dug in and I knew 95% more than the folks in the room did at investor conferences about glioblastoma. And so that keeps me motivated too, is kind of understanding disease states and whatnot. As a leader, what keeps me motivated? I view treating my people with respect and dignity keeps me motivated, and kind of calling people out if they don't. But I also think it's important, and I don't know if it keeps me motivated, but to give compliments in public. And then if there's constructive language, to to do that in private. And so that keeps me motivated to make sure we raise everyone up to a level that is important, again, to treat people the way you want to be treated. So again, what keeps me motivated as a leader is hopefully changing the landscape for a lot of folks. And you can only do what you can do. So we're going to run well-run clinical trials that are appropriately designed.
Yeah. And look, come to my final question, which is the same for everyone as well, Robert. So I don't know if you have a chance to think about it. But if you could have dinner with any scientist or innovator, past or present, who would it be and why?
Yeah, so I did think about this one because I saw some of your other podcasts. It's an interesting one. So I'll go back and have a little bit of history. So I joined my first board, and I can't remember the date, and I was just really excited. I mentioned how I would try to screen to look for people that I liked and that I could work with. My first one, I just wanted to be on a board, and so just to be transparent, I joined the board, and great group. It couldn't have been any better. Actually, it was one of my best boards that I sat on. Probably a year later, one of the board members raised his hand and said, "I need to resign." And he was the best board member far and away. "I need to resign because President-elect Trump at the time, so it must have been late 16, early 17, because President-elect Trump is considering me to head up the FDA, and he didn't want to have any issues or any conflicts." His name was Scott Gottlieb, who I know very well. And I don't know if you've seen him on CNBC or whatnot, just off the chart smart, MD by training, just a brilliant individual, a really nice guy too. So when he joined the FDA, you kind of, you can't have those interactions anymore on a personal level. And now, I've been to a couple conferences, and he speaks, and he has security guys that kind of take him off the stage and whatnot. I've run into him a couple times now, and he couldn't be more pleasant, at those conferences. I would love to sit down and have lunch with him because his knowledge about different parts of biotechnology and the different indications and how the FDA is run and reimbursement and what is just so invaluable that I would love to, and hopefully he's listening to this, love to have a lunch with him at some point and pick his brain. So that's who I think about because again, great individual. When I bump into him, he does take time to chat with me, and so I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I love that answer. It's like a bit more personal than the rest of the ones we get. And to be honest, I really hope he listens as well. That would be incredible. But Robert, absolute pleasure to have you on.
Likewise. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Oh, and look, everyone, please like and subscribe to the Biohub. And thanks so much again, Robert.